Welcome to the Fire and Earth podcast with your hosts, Jason Mefford and Kathy Gruber. Fire and Earth, giving you the keys to unlock your limitless potential.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. I'm your co-host, Kathy Gruber.
And I'm Jason Mefford. And to start with, we just have to ask for your forgiveness about this particular episode because, this episode is about forgiveness. There you go. I got you, right? Boom, right?
I don't know if you got them, but yeah.
Bad joke to start the podcast off with. But no, we, this is something that's kind of come up, I know for Kathy's clients, for me as well in my life as
100%.
well. I mean, it's something that everybody has to deal with, and we really haven't talked too much about it. So we thought we would talk about forgiveness today.
Yeah. Well, and it's such a multi-layered process, right? There's self-forgiveness, and sometimes that's harder than forgiving others. And I have, several clients who, when I'm working through coaching and they're telling me about what happened as a child and how their parents treated them not so great or horrible, and how they're having trouble forgiving that. And one of my clients just recently, he said, the whole concept of forgiveness makes no sense to me. He said, how could you possibly ever forgive somebody for these horrible things that they did? And I said, well, you're carrying, basically they're living rent free in your head. Mm-hmm. You're carrying around those memories, those thoughts. And if you can come from that place of self and put yourself in this compassionate, curious place, and you understand, well, my parent was abused also, or my parent was neglected, or this is the mindset they had. Sometimes you can have that place of compassion of, wow, they were in such a hurt place as well. Now, forgiveness doesn't excuse the behavior, doesn't mean it was okay, but there's that releasing and that lightening of burden when you forgive. And it's really hard and it's really complicated, and everybody views it differently. And I just thought it would be an interesting conversation today.
Well, no, and it's interesting because there's some different sayings that go around this, right? Like one of them that I really like is forgiveness is not for the other person, it's for you, right? And so maybe we can talk about that for a minute. No, I do want to jump back and talk about like that these are horrible things. How can we forgive them, right? But it's interesting because I think, when we can finally look at forgiveness of, it's not for the other person, it's not to help the other person, but it's for us. It's to release us from that burden. And like you said, I mean, so much of the time, if we hold on to resentment, anger, some of the things like that usually go along with this, those are things that are weighing us down, right? And so, like you said, the minute that we can actually forgive and forgive ourselves, right? Because I think this is one too. I can't remember who I was talking to, but we were talking about big T, little t trauma.
Yep.
Right. And so big T trauma, right? The example I used was rape. And this is, again, this is not rape is a horrible thing, right? But it's interesting when you think about it or look at it from a different angle than what we normally look at it. And this kind of comes back to lightening your burden and the self-forgiveness as well.
Yep.
Because so many rape victims feel shame because they feel like it was their fault.
Yeah.
Like I did something that led to this, or I deserved this because I'm a bad person, or whatever, right? And so a lot of times there's this shame that goes along with it. And so there's a lot of self-forgiveness when you go through something like that, but there's also the forgiveness of the perpetrator as well, right? And again, like you said, if we can start to, look at it differently, right? Like, well, maybe that wasn't the person's intention. I mean, again, from dating, and there's it was funny because I was talking to somebody about it, where it's like the no, but the eyes say yes, right?
Yeah.
And again, I mean, sometimes it's a very fine line, and every circumstance is different. But there is a lot of times like that where maybe the one person is like, well, I know you're saying no, but you're grabbing me and you're taking your panties off. And it's like, what am I supposed to think about that? Right. Where they're maybe the other person, that wasn't their intention, or in what they were trying to do. Right. Or maybe that other person was abused and that's all they know.
Yeah.
Right. Because sometimes we just have to have compassion for what the other person is going through, and why they might even think that's a good thing to do.
Yeah. It's such a complicated issue. And, I've talked to a couple clients recently who have had horrible things done to them as kids by their parents. And, they're questioning, like, how could they have done that to me? And it's like, well, they were hurt too. And there was something in them that was broken that caused them to treat you that way. And again, forgiving that is lightening your own burden. And so often the people have already passed on, or you don't have contact with them anymore. And one of the clients said, I can't imagine sitting down with my father and telling him I forgive him. And I said, well, you actually don't have to. I mean, some people would say, yes, sit down and have a conversation with him, tell him you forgive him, because then that lightens the dad's burden a little bit. I said, but I did so much forgiving in regards to my ex-husband, and I never told him that. It was my process for me. And I forgave myself for staying in a situation that I, quote, shouldn't have been there that long, because, timing of the universe just kind of takes when it's time. But I forgave him for so many things, but he doesn't know that. We've never sat down and had that conversation. I did it for me. So I wasn't carrying that resentment, that anger, that want of revenge, that sadness, that grief, that it was, I forgave to lighten me. And I know the moments that I have sat and very consciously done that, this lightening that happens, it's a profound experience when you allow yourself to do that. And again, that doesn't excuse behavior. It doesn't make it okay. The stuff was still horrible, and it's not burdening you anymore.
Yeah, and I think that's what you brought up there too, that I think a lot of times when people think about forgiveness, they have this, what it's supposed to look like in their mind, right? And they're like, I'm not willing to sit down and have that discussion with my father, let's say, right? Because I just don't want to have it. It's uncomfortable. I don't want to hurt his feelings, maybe, right? And so a lot of times people will hang on to these things because they haven't done that particular act or whatever it is that they think they have to do in order to forgive. But just like what you were saying, we can just forgive in our head. We can say it out loud. We can scream in a pillow. We can, the other person doesn't have to know about it for you to release it and for you to move forward.
Yeah.
Right. And I think this is, one that we brought up before. I think it's one of the old Buddhist quotes too, right? It's like, don't live in the past. Why continue to suffer the same things, right? It's like, so when you haven't forgiven somebody, when you're still in the shame for yourself, when you're in the anger, when you're in the whatever it is about the other person, you're continuing to stay there. And so you continue to kind of feed and allow that hurt to fester.
Yep.
Right.
And you're living in the past at that point. And if we're truly living in this present moment, then that's gone. That doesn't matter anymore. Now, does our past affect our present, which informs our future? Absolutely. But if we're tethered so far back to the past, it's going to keep dragging us back there. And what is the suffering that you're facing currently because of that past? Hanging on to things that if you let it go, you'd be freer, you'd be lighter, you'd be more open to things. And if we look at it from an ego state perspective, right, when we're in that neutral place of self, we're compassionate, caring, curious, connected, calm. It's when we bring up that hurt ego state, that angry ego state, that revengeful ego state, that we're not embracing self. And the forgiveness comes from being in self. You can't forgive from that angry state. You can't forgive from that vengeful place. You have to be in that place of self, which is caring and calm and all of those things. So it's really a matter of, what does that ego state need? Does it need to hear an I'm sorry from somebody? We can't always get that, right? I mean, both my parents have passed on. If I want an I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. And I see so many people living in a space where they're waiting for an apology, they're waiting for that reconciliation, and it's probably not going to happen. Could it that you get a phone call out of the blue from someone that beat you up in second grade and they say, I'm so sorry I did that? It could happen. Maybe they're going through AA and they're doing the amends step. No.
But the other person probably doesn't even remember that they beat you up in the second grade, right?
And
So
I wouldn't sit around waiting for that, right?
no.
But we have to find a way to fulfill the need of that ego state and lighten its burden and forgive it so that we can move forward. And it's really about moving forward, right? And not living in that past hurt. Not to diminish anybody's trauma. And at some point, moving forward into that forgiveness is going to be healthier. It's going to be better for you.
Well, and it's funny too, because like you said, a lot of times we feel like we have to have that conversation, like to be able to tell them and to forgive them or say that I forgive you. But I think one of those other constructs that a lot of people are under is, well, I'm not going to forgive you until you apologize to me. Right. And like you said, well, if you're waiting on that, it probably is never going to happen. Right. And so you don't have to tell somebody else. You don't have to have the conversation. You don't have to tell them that you forgive them. They don't have to say they're sorry, right? You can forgive people whether they're sorry or not, right? And I'm sure, some people might feel sorry for what they did, but just might not want to tell you or have the courage to tell you.
Yep.
Or some people may not even be sorry for what they did. One, because either they don't give a shit, or, second reason might be they don't even realize they did anything wrong.
I just was going to say that.
How many times does that happen, right? Where it's like all of a sudden somebody is really pissy with you. And I've seen this sometimes, and with people that I've interacted with, and all of a sudden they'll get kind of pissy, and I'm like, what's the matter? What's going on? What's changed? And they're like, oh, you blah 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 blah. And it's like, whoa, that wasn't my intention.
I didn't even realize I did that.
I didn't even realize I did it, or I said something, but my intention, I was just talking to a friend, just sharing some information that was kind of coming to me, like, tell this person this, right? Because sometimes that comes that comes to me from the universe.
Yep.
And so it's like, I don't fucking know why I'm supposed to say this, but okay, here you go, Kathy. I'm supposed to tell you this, right? Take it, don't take it. I'm just the messenger.
Yep.
Right. And the person was like, when you say that, because you've said that to me now a few times, I feel like you're judging me. And I'm like, oh, friend, that is not what I'm doing. Right. I so do not judge you. I'm not saying those things as a judgment or to say that you need to change or do anything different. I'm just sharing what's coming through to me.
Yep.
And my intention is never to hurt you, never to be judgmental towards you. My only intention is to be kind and loving and respectful and deliver the messages that I feel like I'm supposed to give you.
Yeah.
So, that happens a lot. I mean,
sure.
This whole world is full of people that have no idea that they hurt somebody else's feelings or that somebody
100%.
else was offended by it, right?
Absolutely.
And so they're oblivious to it.
Yep.
Like the kid that beat you up in second grade that doesn't even remember.
Yep.
Right.
And they're not thinking about me.
No.
Why am I still carrying that around? I'm not. I mean, that's an example, but I had a client say this the other day. He's like, I can't believe, he has to know that he hurt me. Him calling me and telling me to never fucking call him again. He has to know he hurt me. And I said, maybe he doesn't. And now 3 years later, you guys have, are back communicating, and my client really feels like he needs an apology. And I said, maybe him just reaching out was that olive branch. Maybe that was his way of saying, I'm sorry. My father, it was so rare that my parents would argue, but the couple times they did, my dad would leave. And my mom would get so upset. He's not coming back. And I'm sitting there thinking, of course he's coming back. And he would not only come back, he would come back with presents, because my dad loved buying things for people. He never said, I'm sorry. His way of reconciling was, hey, I got you this, your favorite candy at the mall, because his love language was, one of them was gift giving. And so that was his way of saying, I'm sorry. People say, I'm sorry in different ways. And if it's not the way that works for you, you have every right to bring that up. I told my client, I said, look, you have a choice to make. You either continue this, this now refreshed relationship with your friend exactly the way it is, where you're afraid to be vulnerable. It's very surface because you're afraid to get hurt again because he's not apologized. Or if you want this relationship to go back to being deeper, you can sit him down and say, look, those couple years ago when you said the things you did, it really hurt my feelings, and I just need you to know that. And he goes, but I don't want confrontation. And I said, interesting. I said, you can say, well, you're a real dick the last couple times. You can say it a different, or you can just it's a risk, be vulnerable and say, it really hurt my feelings when you called me and said, never fucking talk to me again. And then see what he says. And if he's not open to apologizing to that, then you know where you stand in this relationship. And he might not have even have realized, or maybe he feels like he already apologized in a way. And I'm really curious. That's his homework, was come back with me next time and tell me what you're deciding to do. It's fascinating to watch him struggle with this, because it's been a couple sessions where this is like percolating and he's really afraid to bring it up. It's fascinating.
Well, so maybe let's take that. Why don't we take that example and we can just talk about, because I think some of the people listening might be like, well, okay, so how do I forgive somebody else? If it's, if I don't have to have a conversation, if I don't have to wait for their apology, what does it look like? Right. Because again, like you said, so here we have a client, a real client, but a fake client, right? Because we're just using it for an example, right? But obviously this other person did something, told him to fuck off and never talk to him or whatever, right? So your client was offended by that.
And very hurt.
Right? Which again, I mean, you can understand that, especially if it's somebody else that you like, that you want to spend time with. And if they're like, no, don't talk to me, that can hurt, right? So there are different options, right? So let's maybe think about some of the different options, because like you said, they don't want confrontation. So you don't necessarily have to bring it up and have that conversation, right? You can choose not to do that, or you can choose to do it. If you choose to do it, you can choose to be a dick about it, or you can choose to be vulnerable about it. But
which is risky if you're already hurt.
Which is risky, but I can tell you, if you're going to be a dick about it,
that's not going to work.
It's not going to work. So why even go there?
Right.
I mean, if your whole intention is to just kind of be a dick and give it right back to them, like, you're going to see how I felt now, right? Because that's what revenge often is trying to hurt the other person because the other person hurt you.
I'll show you.
Yeah, but all you're doing is you're perpetuating it. Because then they're going to be hurt, and then they're going to want to hurt you back, and it just starts to escalate. What
I found so fascinating with this conversation was not this conversation, that conversation was, as soon as I said, you can always sit him down and say, look, man, I just wanted to bring something up. You really hurt me. I'm so glad we're communicating again. I just needed to let you know. He viewed that as confrontation, which I found fascinating, because in my head, that's not that's not confrontation at all, but he wants to avoid that conversation. He is just he goes, of course he knows he hurt me. It's clear he hurt me. And I'm like, yeah, but it's clear to you and me that he hurt you. It's not maybe clear to him. And so if you feel that you need an apology, you need to bring it up. And so we'll see where that lands. But yeah, I mean, how do you forgive somebody? Do you just say, I forgive so-and-so? Do you have to feel it? Do you light a candle? Do you sacrifice a goat? What do you need to do?
Well, any of those could probably help depending on what you're doing, right? But I think it's interesting because, like you said, sometimes people, and as I was thinking, especially because we mentioned love languages before with your dad and the gifts.
Yeah.
So for somebody whose love language is words, they probably have this bigger desire to hear the other person say they're sorry, right? For me, touch and time are more my love languages, right? So So I wouldn't even need to have the conversation, but giving the other person a hug and actually feeling it and like sending love to the other person while you are hugging them, to me, that's you don't have to say anything. Come up and touch me on the shoulder, give me a hug, do something like that to show me, tenderness or love towards me. That's enough for me, right?
Yep.
But yeah, like I said, the people who are uh who want the words, right, which I can't get the words out of my mouth,
I guess.
They're going to be looking for that, right? Or your dad liked to give gifts. People who like to receive gifts, man, it's great when your husband cheats on you, right? Because he's going to bring you home a big old new piece of jewelry, right?
Well, and that's the joke, right? It's like, oh, I did something. I'm in the doghouse. I better get her a ring. It better be diamonds. I mean, that's kind of the societal joke of that. Well, and I have a client who, anytime her husband would do something wrong, his way of apologizing was he'd make her favorite meal. It was an act of service. And if she came in the door and she smelt that specific dish, she knew he was saying, I'm sorry. And that didn't really work for her, which was fascinating. I mean, she accepted it and she knew that was his way of it, but it wouldn't have been the way she chose.
Right, because acts of service probably wasn't her love language, right? So there's probably one of the tricks, right? Is that if you're trying to, if let's say you're the person who may be hurt, or you're trying to come forward with something, you want to do something that meets the love language of the other person, right? So again, I don't know if your mom liked to receive gifts, but if that was like the lowest one on the thing, and she's like, honey, I don't want that fucking piece of candy, right? Then that's, maybe your dad could have used a different thing, right? Maybe if acts of service was your mom's thing, then he goes and washes her car, or he, I don't know, does her laundries, something that she would normally do.
Right.
Maybe you do that for the person, right? Because I think, a lot of times it's stepping up and just having the courage to be the one that goes first.
Yeah, I think so. And then we get into self-forgiveness, which is even harder, right? Because there's things I can think back on my past that I did that were hurtful, or I remember so clearly. It's terrible that I can remember this so clearly, because there was, and I released this, but there was so much shame around this. We belonged to the local pool for the summer. And I was sitting there with one of my dad's friends and his son, who was maybe my age, maybe a year or two younger. And I was probably 10 or 11. So this kid was probably 8 or 9. And they were going to drive me back to the house because my dad had to leave. And we're getting dressed, we're putting our shoes on, and I tie my shoes, and I look over, and this boy, again, probably 8 or 7, 8, 9, puts his foot out, and his dad ties his shoe for him. And I went, what? The kid can't tie his own shoe? And the dad says, no, he's actually handicapped and can't. Oh, I had no clue this kid was somehow special needs. I think he was autistic. Now that I look back and I know what autism is, I mean, but like kind of classically autistic, he didn't talk much, and I just thought it was Jimmy. It was just the kid I hung out with. I had no clue, but I remember feeling such shame, and the way the dad said it. No, he actually can't. He didn't explain it to me in a kind way. He kind of went smartassy. But I remember for years, I could bring up that feeling and hang on to that shame and how horrible I felt. Like I could still go there if I let myself feel that. But it's like it was from a place of innocence. I wasn't trying to be mean. I didn't hurt him on purpose. I wasn't beating him up. I wasn't teasing him because I knew he had an issue. I was asking a question, though it did come out kind of smartassy, but that came from a place of innocence. And I don't know where this kid is anymore. And if I called him and said, I'm sorry, I said you couldn't tie your shoe, like he'd be so confused. So at some point I had to forgive myself and recognize I just didn't know. I didn't do it on purpose. I didn't mean to be hurtful. And I had to release that from myself, release that burden and let it go.
Well, and it's one of those too, where kind of from the self-forgiveness side, and then also the forgiving the other person, right? Is like in that instance, do we need to sacrifice a goat? Well, if that's your thing, then sacrifice a goat, right? But what I'll do a lot of times is, let's take that situation that you have with that kid from the pool. You have no idea where he is, right? But so what I might do, is think about that experience, and then say, I don't need to feel any guilt or shame for this. I was an 11-year-old kid. I didn't know any different, right? So there's no I don't need to feel shame. In fact, I feel grateful that I was able to have that experience, so I could now be more sensitive around other people, right? And so think of it and start feeling gratitude for having that experience instead of feeling the shame.
Yep.
Because now what you're doing is you're switching that emotion of shame that you're feeling with it for a feeling of gratitude. Right. And so that's one thing I do for myself, for kind of a self-healing, self-love on things like that. Or, I've had people say, you hurt my feelings. And earlier in my life, I would go to kind of a place of shame, like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that. Where now I'm like, I didn't hurt your feelings. You chose to be offended, or you chose to, feel angry because of what I said, but that wasn't my intention. I was doing this from a place of love. So I don't need to feel any shame, right? And kind of stand in my power. But something else that I do a lot of times will be, like that little boy. You have no idea where he is. So I'll just sit and I'll think about that little boy for a few minutes and think about that experience and say something like this, right? I apologize, if I offended you or your dad when I said that wasn't my intention. I send you love and light. And just for 10 seconds, just feel like your body's kind of glowing and like you're shooting this light beam to wherever that person is in the world. You don't have to know where they are. You just have to imagine. I would, in that instance, I would imagine that father's face and the boy's face, and I would like send both of them little light beams. And then it's done.
And I've done that too.
And I don't think about it anymore.
Yeah, I've done that too. And also going back to the put yourself in others' shoes, no pun intended. The dad must, how did he feel having a son with special needs? Because this was also back in the early 80s, if not late, it was probably the early 80s, where there wasn't the kind of resources and there wasn't the understanding of what autism was, or whatever this kid was dealing with. And for me, who was supposed to be a friend, to say it that way, oh, what, he can't tie his shoes? That might have brought up shame for the dad. I don't have a normal kid. He can't tie his shoes. I'm forever going to have a giant child living with me. Who knows what I triggered in the dad that caused him to be kind of not so nice back to me, because he very easily could have said, well, Kathy, he actually can't, he's got this disorder. And, he didn't explain it to me. He just went, no, he actually can't. He's, didn't say the R word, but, he's like, he actually can't. He's he actually can't. And I was just like, oh, crap, I didn't know. He could have handled it in a different way. I could have handled it in a different way. But, who knows what I triggered in him by saying that. So I have to forgive that whole exchange. But I'll do that too. I'll sit and I'll just like think about the person and say, it's loving kindness meditation, right? It's sending that kindness, that love to the people, radiating it out. So, this is such a fascinating conversation. It's been a long one. We should go.
Oh,
forgive us for
coming in.
Forgive us for talking.
Forgive us for talking longer than we normally do.
This is an important topic.
Well, it is, because I think it's, because we've talked about self-love before and about how important self-love is. And I think one of the reasons why we don't love ourselves as much as we should or could is because of a lot of the shame and the fact that we haven't forgiven ourselves for the mistakes or what we perceive as mistakes that we've made. And I think we've talked about that before, where there really are no mistakes. There's just learnings. There's opportunities for growth. And when we can start to do that for ourselves, then it makes it easier to do it for other people. Right. And so So especially, what I would say is, for those big T things, it's like, don't worry about forgiving the other person for raping you or, beating you up or whatever the big T happens
Killing
to
your
be.
family,
Killing your family, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Don't worry about forgiving that. Worry about forgiving yourself first. And it's going to make the other way much easier when you get to that point.
Yeah.
Because there is, I know we've gone long, but this popped into my head too, that I don't know if I've even shared on here, but when I was younger, my younger brother was accidentally shot and killed by his best friend. And it was an accident. It was a pure accident. There was no foul play, anything like that. And I remember my parents, and especially my mother, teaching me this lesson when I was 15. Right? My brother was 13, I was 15. And I remember her, because obviously, I mean, imagine how you feel as, accidentally killing your best friend. And I remember watching my mom go up to him and just give him a big hug. Right? Where most people, it'd be like, oh my God, you killed my son. But I remember the strength that she had of just having her walk up and hug that boy and say, it was not your fault. It was his time to go. And we don't have any ill feelings towards you.
Wow.
And that was the way our family handled it. And I saw him probably 10 years later. And we were talking. There was nothing, right, from me to him. But I remember giving him a hug again at that point and wishing him well. So forgive others, forgive yourself, and forgive me for crying, because that was one of the big lessons in my life.
Yeah. Now you got me crying too. All right. And on that,
we're going to blubber our way out of this episode.
Yeah. Explore it. Explore forgiveness. That's the final thing. Okay. I'm Kathy Groover. I can be reached at kathygruver.com.
And I'm Jason Mefford. I can be reached at jasonmefford.com. So go out, have a great week, and explore forgiving yourself and forgiving others. See you on the next episode. See ya.
See ya.